Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another live stream. And unfortunately, last night at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea lost 1-0 to Manchester City and remain 10th in the Premier League with 6 points from the last 24 on offer. Safe to say that things aren't going too well for the Blues, although admittedly last night, particularly in the first half, there were some promising signs for the future. You could see some ideas starting to formulate for the young players that are obviously going to make up a big part of this project in the coming years were quite positive. I thought Chukwuemeka was really good. Great to see Omari Hutchinson make his debut, even though he looked a little bit kind of nervous, which is to be expected. Lewis Hall was pretty good when he came on, perhaps should have done better with a chance. So, and with Dennis Zakaria himself, shining in midfield, there were certainly positives to take, but ultimately it's a results-based business. And again, we didn't pick the result up. Alex, thanks for coming on as always, mate. Massively appreciated. We watched the game together last night. Have any thoughts changed since after the game? How are you feeling about it? Because I feel a little bit strange, kind of feeling almost relieved that we kind of only lost 1-0 and that we actually played a little bit better, which is kind of not the usual expectations that we're used to, really.
No, I wouldn't say I feel relieved. I think that's I can understand why you feel like that, especially given how difficult this season has been and given how we know it's going to go, because it's not going to get any easier. But I feel pretty happy and content, to be fair. I feel optimistic because I know that pressure isn't on Potter, and I don't think it's going to phase him because I think there's a clause in his contract. He can't be sacked if he doesn't finish in the top four. Now, we are far, far away from top four, so let's not get ourselves in that conversation. I mean, to be honest with you, my prediction recently was 7th, and the way we are playing and the quality of the players we have, the lack of depth with all the injuries, it's going to be really, really hard to even finish in that position, because when you actually compare our team to a lot of other teams, it is a mid-table quality side. And for me, overall, you can't really criticize a lot of the players because they're literally performing to the best of their ability. And in that's where mid-table comes into it. I mean, Dave is just not the player he was. Aging. I mean, I feel bad. I feel bad for Potter. He really doesn't have options. Chukwuemeka, he used to play for a mid-table side, so that transition does take time. And I'm not saying he's not very good, but he's certainly not performing to the level of a Champions League player. Thiago Silva, Koulibaly, I think it was better than them. We're much happy when they swapped sides. I think Koulibaly on the left-hand side worked well. But as well, I do also think we dropped a little bit deeper against against City compared to when we played against Forest, which is obvious because they were always going to have quality on the ball. In the midfield, Zakaria, really, really happy with his performance. We just need to see consistency. But the one thing I want to highlight is he stood out. He was special. And, that really deserves a lot of praise, because to win that midfield battle against the Guardiola side, you've got to be up to the top of your standard. And Kovacic, we knew he was always going to perform. With Aubameyang, he didn't get fed. He didn't do anything.
He was crap, wasn't he?
No, there's no surprise. I think, people are saying he's rubbish. He's certainly not his best, but also he's playing in a rubbish team. So, it all kind of comes together with Pulisic. He's made a glass, injured again. Why doesn't he get game time? Well, this is probably the reason, because he's injured half the time.
Yeah.
And then obviously Sterling as well. You thought maybe he'd bounce back in the big game against his former side. Didn't even last 5 minutes.
It lasted 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, and obviously Havertz, I'll save the best for last.
Okay.
Absolutely rubbish. And I have to just say, I have been so protective of this player. I really, really do believe in, I don't know what the word is, just having the ethics of a Chelsea man. We want to see that effort, that grit, that desire. And I actually think that we do see it from Havertz. This is the thing. That hasn't changed. But it's just at this stage now where I'm like, give me 10 goals in the season. Give me 10 assists.
Mate,
give me something. I mean,
mate,
at least with Mason Mount, I can look at what he's done in the past and I can say, you know what? Statistically, he actually did very well. I mean, last season he carried us in a lot of ways. So, you actually have the right to have a bad season sometimes when we know you are capable of getting to a certain level, because we've seen it, right? With Havertz, we've never seen it. Why should I expect to change my opinion when nothing's ever changed with him? He runs, he presses, he tracks back, he does all of those things, but you are not paid to do that. You're paid to score goals and get assists. This is what I can't get my head around, Charlie.
Yeah.
The amount of times where I just thought to myself, I must have been missing something in Matthew Lower. We've sat there so many times. Obviously, when you're right behind the gantry, you got a completely different view. And just the amount of times where there was players there, runners
Mate,
there.
always
Aubameyang
goes
was one of them.
backwards. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Bit of a run.
Yeah, no, mate. It is tricky. Like, do you know what? Look, there were positives last night. Let's get the negatives out of the way first, because then we can move on to slightly better things. I will always defend Potter, and I think he's been dealt a shit hand. I mean, I was saying to you after the game on fan cams that, like, Chelsea's one of the hardest jobs at the best of times. And when you're parachuted into an absolute mess with no transfer window, no pre-season, no time to really work on anything on the training pitch, because you're playing every 3 days, 3 times a week in the build-up to the World Cup. You then got 6 weeks off of the World Cup, but you're working with the bulk of the players that aren't actually going to formulate part of the first team plan. So how much useful work was actually done in that period? And then to add to that, you've got 10 injuries. And like, when you put all those things together, I'm thinking, well, hang on a second. What more can this guy actually do? Yes, okay, he could perhaps make different decisions within the game. In-game management could improve in certain areas. I thought particularly against Forest, the substitutions were poor. But at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, there's not really much more he can do. This is the hand we've got. And I said afterwards, like, look at the difference in quality at the moment. Chasing a game, City can throw on Jack Grealish and Riyad Mahrez. And what are we doing? We're chucking on Amari Hutchinson, Lewis Hall, and Conor Gallagher. That is a difference. We haven't got the squad to compete with the top teams. And we are where we are because we deserve to be there. And that's how good we are right now. And people going, oh, yeah, but these players won the Champions League. Well, a lot of those players have gone. And secondly, as well, they massively overachieved. They somehow managed to hit a level that is way above their actual ability. And now we're actually seeing the reality of the situation. This is how good these players are. They just happen to outperform themselves massively for a run of 5 or 6 games. That's what happened, because and that's the reality of the situation. Look at the injury list, right? And tell me any manager that wouldn't be struggling with Chelsea right now when you look at this injury list. 10 players out. Kante, James, Mendy, Fofana, Broja, Chilwell, Loftus-Cheek, Mount, Sterling, Pulisic. Mate, Potter's fighting with one hand tied behind his back. That's one centre-back short of an entire first 11 out injured. I mean, what do you expect?
I mean, to be fair, just going back to that point, if we literally go player by player in terms of the players we had that won us the Champions League and what we have now, I mean, Rudiger, Koulibaly, it's not even a conversation.
No, not right now.
Christensen was at least available. Fofana's never available. So yeah, Christensen wins that argument as well. Are you honestly going to tell me that you would take Raheem Sterling at this moment of time over Timo Werner?
Oh, no chance. Not, mate. I got battered for this. I can't remember where it was. I said that actually Sterling has been no better than Timo Werner since he's arrived. And I fully stand by that fact, because he actually hasn't.
No, you're right. You're right. And then in terms of the strikers, I mean, we actually had 2 great strikers. We had Giroud and Tammy Abraham, and we'd take either of those any day of the week instead of Aubameyang. And this is what people need to understand. It's not a case of, it's not a case of us trying to bail out Potter for the sake of it, right? We are realistic as fans. We need to look at the whole picture. I mean, when you actually look at the results we've had, I mean, I don't remember we had a transfer crisis, an injury crisis like this before. I cannot remember the last time we had this many first team players out. I mean, I would love to know the value in total in terms of transfers, everything, what we've actually missed out on. in the past months. I mean, we don't have a left back, we don't have a strong midfield, we don't have a good backup goalkeeper. Mendy's injured, our right back's out. I mean, our most creative player last season is out. Our star signing is out. What is there to be optimistic about except the long term? So that's why, as a fan, I have to look at Potter and say, if I was in that position, I wouldn't have a Scooby Doo what to do. And we can take the positives out of the City game, because even though there was no quality, really, no end product, we saw great intentions, and that comes from the style of play that the manager wants to implement. So he could have just sat there and parked the bus, knowing that we have no depth in the team. But he came out and tried to get the team to play, got the best out of some players, but unfortunately, you need 11 to play, and we can't have passengers, and we do have them. So we just need to give him the chance to implement his style of play first of all, which I actually think we saw a good foundation yesterday. For what he's trying to do, especially with the width out wide. And, you've got to let the man have a pre-season and get some signings in. I think that is pretty much your minimum requirements. I mean, we say he's been backed. It doesn't look like it from the squad. No. It doesn't look like it from the squad we're working with at the moment, bearing in mind the injuries we have. So actually, he's been dealt a really difficult hand. But obviously, if players do start to get to fitness and stay fit, that's the key word. Things can absolutely change, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So
no, it's just
got to sort of grit our teeth.
Mate, do you think there's something fundamentally wrong with either the training we're doing, the conditioning we're doing in the gym? Because all teams get injuries, fully aware of that, but to have this many injuries kind of seemingly all coinciding together, having Reece James and Fofana re-injure the same area, like on their comebacks, something, this is not bad luck. When this happens, this is a recurring pattern. When it happens this often, to me, it points to a fundamental issue. And I think it's something we need to look at. We either need to look at the kind of the conditioning we're doing in the gym, the sort of the training we're doing. Are we going too intense in sessions before games? Like, I mean, I'm no sports scientist or whatever, but there must be something we're not doing right to be picking up this many injuries on a consistent basis. I mean, do you think there's something the club need to look at? We need to look at kind of what we're doing in the gym, look at the way the players are conditioning themselves, because you shouldn't pick up this many injuries all at once.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many answers to that question. It could be a case of the players aren't training hard enough, which is why their conditioning is not good enough, why they're pulling muscles, because they haven't prepared well enough, they haven't recovered well enough after sessions. That could also be a criticism of the staff, not doing the correct sessions, not really paying attention to how the players are feeling and how their bodies are coping. Also, you can look at the medical team. I think Bowley brought in a new one. Am I right in saying that?
Well, no, they got rid of the chief medical guy who'd been here for about 18 years. At least publicly, there's been, well, not what I've seen, there's been no kind of announcement of anyone new coming. I don't know if that's a sort of thing the club would publicize if new medical people come in, but at least publicly, there's been nothing from the club saying that new medical staff have come in. Obviously, there would have been existing people already there, but I don't know if any actual new medics have come in or not.
I mean, that was something I heard as well. So maybe I need to just do some more research on that, because I'm sure that there was new medical staff that have come in. If that is the case, then that's on Bowley, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. As far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many answers. I mean, I do get the impression that Potter's sessions aren't as intense as Tuchel's. He just doesn't seem like as intense a guy. But this is where I was having arguments with people yesterday, because they were saying to me, the players lack motivation, this and that. As a manager, this is where we go back to 2018 with Sarri. And I always refer to this season because it's so similar in terms of the dynamic with the manager and the lack of quality he has to work with, right? The only difference is we don't have Hazard to bail us out. To bail us out. Do you know, I actually forgot what I was going to say, Charlie.
Nice.
But yeah, basically
Similarities with the
what I'm
Sarri
trying to
season,
say is that Sarri used to say that the players weren't motivated, right? He said that after we lost to Arsenal. And I know Potter's not saying that, but we're seeing, kind of signs of that. But it's not his job to do it. It's their job. Like, you're a professional player. You're making hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, a month, millions of pounds a year. Like, you can't expect that to be a viable excuse. I know Tuchel was so good at managing players, and tactically he was pretty much the best. I mean, if you look at his record against the top teams, we were absolutely top notch. It's not Potter's fault at this moment in time if players can't sort themselves out. Why isn't Thiago Silva getting injured? He's the oldest out of the bunch. He's clearly just taking it more seriously.
But
so
it's a good point you make. Sorry, mate. It's a good point you make. Like, if you're a professional footballer playing in the Premier League, like virtually every young lad's dream to do, being paid a lot of money to do it, playing for Chelsea, one of the best clubs there is. If that doesn't motivate you, and you need an individual to further motivate you on top of that, then you shouldn't be playing football, or you're in the wrong job. You shouldn't be playing for this club, because if you can't be motivated by being a Premier League footballer and playing for Chelsea, then something's not right.
Yeah. I mean, you said it yourself, and it's not just motivation, though. As we said, I mean, I think the effort was definitely there against City. So let's not go and say that's the card I'm pulling out. It's just we're not good enough as well. But when you combine those two, right, effort and professionalism in terms of the injury side, I'm not going to include Ben Chilwell in that, because I think that was Potter's fault. I don't know why Ben Chilwell played against Milan,
Zagreb.
but
they played against Zagreb, didn't he? Yeah, full 90 as well. And then subsequently, pictures came out the day after of him in training from the day before, and his hamstring was heavily strapped.
Mate, I mean, that is where I'm just frustrated. But at the same time, I can't really be too frustrated. I mean, Potter must have had some sort of reason for playing him. I don't know what the hell it was, but he must have had something. But that is the invaluable experience that he will gain at this level, and this is why we need to give him time so he can make these mistakes this season, and then obviously bounce back next season, and hopefully sort of steady the ship.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. I just wanted to actually, by the way, big up James, guys. Everyone like and subscribe. You know what to do. Hoping to hit 3,000 subscribers, well, by the end of the season, but ideally well before that. So yeah, everyone do your bit, spread the word, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I wanted to bring something up because a lot of people have either got selective memories or they're just stupid. Probably a bit of both. Thinking that, Chelsea have suddenly become shit since Graham Potter's come in, and that isn't the case at all. Let me just find it now. I mean, a bit of shameless self-promotion on my Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do that as well. But basically, comparing Tuchel's last 18 games as manager versus Potter's first 18 games as managers. And yes, I understand that you can say, oh, well, the opposition weren't the same and whatnot. I fully appreciate that. But the point is still valid, and the point remains there that actually in the last, people seem to forget how shit we were under Thomas Tuchel towards the end of his reign. Mate, we were up at Leeds, fucking awful. You were down at Southampton, dreadful. Zagreb away, utter shit show performance. And people don't seem to realise that actually we were terrible under Thomas Tuchel towards the end of his reign. And actually, 18 games for Potter, 18 games with Tuchel, he's actually got a better record. And I'm not saying he's a better manager, but this idea that since Potter's come in, the form's gone off a cliff is simply untrue. He's actually doing no worse than Thomas Tuchel was. And I think people need to understand that. And that might be a sort of a wake-up call for a lot of individuals. But we're no worse than we are. Yes, we're in a worse position in the table, and yes, we might have less points and whatnot, but ultimately, Tuchel's last 18 games compared to Potter's first 18, Potter's got a better record. They're virtually identical. So to suggest that Potter's at fault for us going to shit is just not true.
Yeah. I mean, I actually didn't know these stats myself, so it's quite refreshing to see it. And also, we have to highlight he's doing it with a worse squad, a worse group of players. Frank Lampard just couldn't get the best out of a decent group of players. He mismanaged Kai Havertz. I think he overly relied on Werner, and Tuchel came in, and it was quite refreshing to see that he was a top-class manager knew what it was like at this level and knew how to get the best out of top players. Whereas with Potter, it's a completely different scenario. So that's why it's probably the opposite way around in terms of, not as nice a start and obviously declining. But it does set you up for long-term success, because I'd rather not do as well this season, knowing that we're going to get more stability in the coming seasons and actually keep a manager for 4 or 5 years. Because I can't remember the last manager we did that. It was probably Mourinho, right?
No, we've never done it, mate. The longest serving Chelsea manager in the last 20 years is Mourinho, 3.5 years. No one's lasted any longer. That's mad.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show how difficult the job is, but it's not the Abramovich era anymore, and this is where it's going to suit Potter so well. And this is why I also don't overlook the things he says in press conferences, and I think people overly criticise that. Like when he says dropping points is part of the game, I mean, he's not lying.
No, he's not wrong.
People seem to overreact to that and say, well, you don't have the top manager's mentality. Well, we just drew 1-1 to Nottingham Forest and lost 1-0 to Man City. So, at some stage, you just have to accept that is the reality. And although you want to come out swinging, you can only do that if you've got good players. He knows just as well as we do the players aren't good enough, so he's trying to protect them as well in that press conference. And as far as I'm concerned, if I'm Graham Potter and I want to get the best out of this team, I'm going to try and shield them as much as I can from criticism. And if that means I'm going to get criticised, that's fine. But if that means Havertz can score one more goal, or Zakaria can do better, or Kepa, whatever, he's just trying to get the best out of the squad. And I think as well with this modern day generation of players, they're not able to take that criticism. So also we look into the press conferences too much. We have no idea what he's saying in the dressing room. For all we know, he could absolutely be taking their heads off. It could be completely different to what we would visualize. So I wouldn't overthink it too much. As I said, when we have a manager that is renowned for a process, you must give him that process. That is why Jurgen Klopp got the job at Liverpool. That is why Guardiola got given an extra season at City, right? His first season, they were crap. So let's just take these things into consideration and try and have a little bit of empathy, because it is not an easy job.
No, it's not an easy job at all. I'm going to get to a few things in the chat now quickly before we move on. I have to say, attacking threat was diabolical last night. Yeah, it was, but it's nothing new. This is the same group of players we've had, and we've had how many years? We've had attacking issues for years. Ever since Diego Costa left, essentially, we've had problems going forward. It's as simple as that. It's been poor. Home side should be creating numerous chances on goal. We just haven't got the quality to do that.
Who's going to do it?
Who's doing? Yeah, who's going to create the chances? Look
Kovacic?
at that team. Look at the team last night. Kovacic, for as good a footballer as he is not someone that you rely on for G&A. So, look, this is what I mean. Like, it's all very well saying that, but please look at the team out last night. Who is providing that was on the pitch and that was available? And the answer is, when you look into it, no one's providing that. That's why we're not creating any chances, because we simply do not have the quality in the team to create the opportunities that we should be creating. Which is why I always say, when people go on, Chelsea should have tried harder to get Erling Haaland. Haaland wouldn't be scoring goals at Chelsea for this exact reason, because we don't create any opportunities. And this is the problem. Yeah. We haven't got the quality in the team to actually create enough chances. So it's very easy to say, we should be creating more chances. We should be, but we don't have the quality, which is why we're not. And until we address that, this is always going to be a problem. What's this? Can't believe fans and being positive about last night. We lost at home without scoring. Yeah, we didn't correct. No, we didn't. I think this is, you can refuse to believe, but this is the reality. Is this group of players better than 10th? Maybe slightly, but this group of players is not a top 4 group of players. No chance.
But when we say group of players, well, we just need to highlight, we're not talking about the whole squad. We're talking about the players that we have available.
Yeah. This group of players, I would even argue, mate, are about even under Tuchel. Even if Tuchel was here for this season, I still don't think we would have finished top 4. I think it would have been a massive task, and that's kind of the point. This group of players, is it better than 10th? Probably yes. Is it good enough for top 4? Absolutely not. It just isn't. And that's the reality. What else have we got here? What exactly have you guys ever seen in Kai? Not really, not much at all, to be honest. That's the reality. That's the reality of the situation. Look, I don't hate him. Ridiculous. I will always support anyone that puts the shirt on, but I've kind of lost faith in Havertz, and I don't expect anything from him now. I support him when he plays, but ultimately he needs to win me back over by showing me that he deserves to be here, and he's not doing that. So, there's no reason for Chelsea to keep him because he's not doing anything. So I honestly, like you, mate, if someone comes in for him in the summer, a big team in Europe, maybe a Bayern Munich or something, we need to get rid because he's shown nothing to suggest that he should be here.
You know what's funny as well, actually, just going back to that. Do you actually think he would do well at Bayern Munich?
Yeah, probably because it's Bundesliga, different style of play. I actually think he'd probably be quite decent there.
I don't even know if I believe that, to be fair. I mean, judging from what we saw yesterday, I don't see any evidence of it. And to be honest with you, mate, I mean, it's against the smallest teams. I mean, even for Germany, like he scored 2 against, what was it, Costa Rica? People are hyping him up.
2 against Costa Rica. Yeah, look, do you know what? It's weird. He's a bit of an enigma because having watched a bit of him at Leverkusen before we signed him, like there is obvious ability there. We're by no means saying that Kai Havertz is a shit footballer because he evidently isn't. But what we're obviously saying is that he is not delivering for Chelsea and he's not showing why we paid that money for him. You look at Kai Havertz and he looks like a Sunday League footballer. Like it just isn't happening for him. And I don't know what the solution is. We've tried him in various different positions. We've tried him in different systems and it just isn't working. He's one of those moments players, Champions League final goal, fine. Winning goal in the Club World Cup, fine. But actually, week in, week out in the Premier League, you cannot rely on him to offer any attacking threat whatsoever. And you can't carry passengers in the team. We're struggling enough as it is. We can't afford to have players at the top end of the pitch that aren't offering anything. And virtually all our attackers offer nothing at the moment, which is why we're struggling so much.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you look at his first season, to be fair, I mean, Lampard didn't even want to play him. We know why, based on what we're seeing at the moment. He actually improved in his second season, but it's like the guy's peaked. You cannot get 10 goals and 10 assists out of this man. So, in those positions, if you want to push for league titles, it's a no-brainer. I mean, Man City are behind Arsenal in the table, and look at the depth and look at the quality they have.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way to compete with that is to get rid of players who can't. And Havertz is one of those players. So it's nothing personal. I mean, the guy actually tries really hard. He puts in a good shift, but I don't even see like the right intentions in terms of trying to score goals, trying to get assists, right? If the intention was there, he would be taking shots outside the box. He would be taking a man on. He would pass the ball forward. Like, these are very simple things that we ask for, and it doesn't always have to come off. But at least if we can see the intention, hopefully things can improve over time. But he's just playing it safe, and unfortunately, that's not good enough.
I mean, mate, this is a good point, and never say never in football. But right now, for me, based on what we've seen so far, there is virtually zero chance of us coming in the top 4. But I will also say that there's still over half the season to go. And depending on the signings that come in January, things can change. And is 10 points insurmountable? No. Is it insurmountable in our current guys? Absolutely. But I haven't fully given up. Do I expect top 4? Absolutely not. But have I fully 100% given up on it? No, not entirely, because you've always got that hope that the lads can kind of turn it around. But I mean, what do you think, mate? Obviously, mathematically, there's still a chance, but it would take a huge swing now for us to gain 10 points on the top 4. It's gonna be more than that. Let's be honest, because we're not going to win all our games in January. It's going to be more than 10.
I mean, just look at it logically. Man United are actually a solid team. They've got a solid manager, knows how to play at this level, has experience, has got rid of deadwood like Ronaldo, who made the team worse. I mean, we could say what we want about Ronaldo. He did not improve that Man United team this season. He certainly didn't suit the style of play in terms of pressing. They also play Europa League football. Okay, this means they are able to rotate to prioritize Premier League games, knowing that they can still get results on a Thursday night. Newcastle, no European football whatsoever.
Yeah.
So they're going to be fresh for each and every game. So we have no advantages over these guys. And we also don't have the points. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no competing against those teams. This season, unfortunately to say, we are not a top 6 team. Newcastle have taken our slot.
Yeah. Mate, Spurs are better than us. Which is, I mean, in terms of, like, I would always fancy us to beat Spurs, but in terms of over a course of a season, Spurs probably finish above us this season, and that's
fine. That is what it is, mate.
That's reality.
Yeah.
Wanted to dive into the attack. It's not just the attack, because obviously, you know, what's feeding the attack is also not good enough, but the attack is a massive issue still. Countless hundreds of millions we've spent on attacking players, and yet there seems to be no real. We don't seem to be any closer to getting the right answer to solving our attacking issues. You know, when Kunku's coming in the summer, we'll have to wait until he arrives to see kind of what's going to happen there. Sterling was like the big hope this summer. I'm not writing him off after 6 months at the team, but he's been massively underwhelming. He's been poor. Aubameyang just simply isn't the answer at all. He doesn't offer anything. Aubameyang's had 2 shots on target during his last 8 Premier League games, which is utterly abysmal. He's had 5 shots in 8 games and only 2 shots on target, which is quite damning. The centre forward situation is a massive problem. When your options are Aubameyang and Kai Havertz, is it really any wonder we are where we are in a table? Mate, what are your thoughts on our centre forward options? Because quite honestly, they're dreadful. I know Broguer's injured, but even then, I wouldn't rely on him to be a regular source of goals in this side.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should probably highlight John's comment. That sums it up. We have no attacking players that actually attack.
Yeah, it's quite a problem, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, only Chelsea, right? I mean, we used to be. The difference is last season we could defend, right, and we could knowingly get a clean sheet and then nick that goal, right? It's not like we were scoring tons of goals last season, but we were able to get 1 or 2, right? And this is with our strongest squad as well.
Yeah.
Now we haven't got a real defense either. And on top of that, we can't nick anything. I mean, there's just no grit. There's no intention to actually make things happen. And when we talk about that, it's anything from having the confidence to whip in across first time, have the confidence to trust the players next to you, whether that's Azpilicueta running alongside you or, you know, up front with Aubameyang. There's clearly a lack of trust because Kai Havertz yesterday could have picked out Aubameyang many, many times. There's no chemistry. There's no fluidity. There's just not that spark, right? Don't disrespect Everton Lewis. He blames it all. No, even Lewis knows that Aubameyang hasn't been good enough. But that's not taken away from the fact that there's a reason that he's also struggled. Like, I mean, if he'd have missed countless chances, and I know he missed the sitter against Nottingham Forest, but if he was missing those chances week in, week out, then you can say, right, he's not good enough. He's not doing the job. And we already knew when we signed him that he's not a player that's supposed to be dropping deep, linking up with the team, getting past the man. You know, he doesn't do that. He makes runs, gets himself into scoring positions, and then he needs to be fed. If he doesn't get fed, nothing's going to happen. I mean, when he scored in his debut, it's a perfect example of when he gets given an opportunity to actually make something happen, then he has the confidence to go and score goals. But I'm sorry, football players aren't robots. They need to be given more than 1 chance to score. So we talk about 5 shots, only 2 on target. I mean, that's almost a 50%. That's almost 50%. So really, it's just a case of getting those numbers up. In any form of work, you know, let's just look at sales. You've got to make a lot of calls, right? It's like the same in football. You got to shoot. If you're not shooting the ball, you cannot score. And if you're not given the chances, you can't shoot. So this isn't on Aubameyang, but that's not saying he's good enough. I mean, let's look at Lukaku as well, right? Missed countless opportunities for us. That is why he's crap. Not because he did nothing, but also when he had the chances, he didn't take them either. So he was the worst of everything. Aubameyang is only one side of the spectrum. And if we do end up recruiting, getting some creativity into our midfield, hopefully getting Reece James and back as well, we'll have a little bit more sort of attacking threats out wide as well, because they're the players that are going to feed him, not Kovacic and Zakaria. Unfortunately, when there's no one to create, Aubameyang is useless in this side, and that's probably why he didn't start. Because at least when you start Pulisic and Sterling, you've got runners who will run in behind, try and take a man on. You're going to get a little bit more you're going to get a little bit more out of it.
Mate, I rated it. I mean, there weren't that many other choices for him to do, but I rate the fact that Potter wasn't afraid to sub off Aubameyang, having subbed him on. What did you think of that? I mean, Aubameyang was dreadful yesterday. He had one touch in the City box in the whole time he was on, which is not good enough. And as we've said, it's not entirely his fault. But at the end of the day, he needs to be doing a lot more. When you're not getting the ball as a striker, you need to do something different, and he just hasn't got that something different in him. But what did you make of Potter's boldness to do that? Because it is a bold decision from a manager. You don't see many managers do it. What were your thoughts on it? I mean, obviously, it's a bit humiliating for Aubameyang, but he can't have any complaints. He was poor.
Yeah, but he can have complaints. He's not being fed. He's not being fed.
Yeah.
And this is why I do agree with Lewis, because, yes, he wasn't good enough, but why? Because he's getting no service. So, it was the right decision from Potter. And it shows that he does have character and he doesn't have grit. All the things that people are saying he doesn't have. You don't get to this level of the game, have the journey that you've had from Sweden to Swansea to Brighton to Chelsea, right? All the way to the top of football, because we are literally right at the peak of the hierarchy. You don't get to this level without backbone and character. So Potter's not going to mess around with players. You give him a better group of players, he's going to do exactly the same thing to win games. The only difference is with crap, right? He has to work with really average mid-table standard players. And you've only got to take your hat off to Potter for the way we set up against City, the way we had to deal with all of the pressures in the first 20 minutes with the injuries. And, you're trying to give youngsters a chance. I mean, that's something as well, isn't it? So there are positives we can take. Is Felix the answer? Lord knows. No. As far as I'm concerned, no one can save us this season.
Mate, Felix is not the answer, in my opinion. Plus, Atletico Madrid are asking for ridiculous money for a 6-month loan. They want 15 million euros fee for the 6 months, plus covering the 6 mil salary. So they want 21 million for 6 months, and they want an obligation to buy for 86 million at the end of it, which is just utter nonsense. Absolutely no chance at all. Mudryk, interesting. The Shakhtar winger, obviously, he wants Arsenal. Chelsea is still trying to muscle in on that deal. I don't know what's going to come of that. Obviously, Dario Serna and the Shakhtar executives were in Bowley's box last night watching the game. Be interested to see what discussions took place there. Willian was out with one of the Shakhtar directors as well, so hopefully he was putting in a good word for us. But yeah, there's not many. We've not been linked with many attacking players at all. It's Mudryk. The João Felix stuff's died out. Marcus Thuram is a name that seems to have cropped up over the last couple of days. The Mönchengladbach and French international. I mean, is he the answer? I don't really know. I mean, I look at attackers, and
that's probably like a good Potter signing to add, because he can actually develop that kind of player. And especially if he comes in January, as we said, that there is that time knowing that we're not under pressure with a title race. So that makes sense to me as a player who can develop under Potter, and also not judge Potter as a manager who doesn't have experience at the top players. When you're signing superstars, they're going to have it in the back of their mind that Potter's come from Brighton. So sometimes actually getting those other players like this geezer from Mönchengladbach or Caicedo, whoever it is that hasn't played at the top level, I think that actually works quite well.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't got a huge issue with it. But mate, in terms of attacking options, I mean, if no one comes in, I mean, I don't think any of us expected to see him this season at all. But I mean, there could be a chance that the lad Fofana that we signed from Molde in Norway. I mean, is there opportunity for him? I mean, how much worse would he be than Aubameyang or Kai Havertz? I'm not sure if I'd find it hard to imagine that he'd be any worse than those two. Do you think that maybe we could see him getting some opportunities that were perhaps unexpected if we don't bring in a replacement for Breyer in this window?
Yeah, I mean, maybe why not play on Sunday? Why not play on Sunday? We have nothing to lose in the cup. Great experience for him to come in and make his debut in a great competition against a great team. Yeah, whatever we do, right, it really just has to be looking at next season. How can we get this team to a position where we have a better idea of what we need to do, the players we need, the players we don't, to push next season, because next season's really about top four, isn't it? Just getting in the top four
next season,
and then the season after that is really going to be a title push. So if Fofana gets a few opportunities, I mean, at least Potter can see how he plays on the big stage and copes with that pressure. But you could also argue that maybe Aubameyang needs more minutes to get his confidence up, especially after what happened yesterday. But we don't have many players to choose from anyway. So whatever we see, I don't think there's going to be any massive surprises. But it would be nice to go on a cup run. I think it would do Potter the world of good. I mean, if we can get to Wembley with this group of players for this season, I just think that it would be an absolute... It would actually be a reasonably successful season, even if we don't finish in Europe, because at least we've picked up a trophy, right? So
for
sure, we should definitely prioritise.
I mean, mate, let's move on to the positives and have a bit of a discussion about the youngsters. Let me just quickly get to this. Oba was the only option available for a team that discarded their only striker in Lukaku and Werner. He was worth the investment to see if something can be pulled out of him. Look, we left ourselves massively short, in terms of getting a centre forward once we moved on Lukaku. There wasn't really any viable options out there. It was always going to be an older striker as a stopgap, and Oba probably was the best available. But you talk about, yes, we spent money in the summer, but you look at it, and as we said, Koulibaly and Fofana have been no better than Rudiger and Christensen were. Fofana, we don't know because he's been injured most of the time, but Koulibaly's not been as good as Rudiger. We've replaced Lukaku and Werner with Aubameyang and Sterling, and you could probably say that both have been worse. So actually, the team hasn't actually got any better than it was last season. It's arguably got worse. So, yeah. I mean, was Aubameyang worth the gamble? I don't really know. Was I excited for it? Not really. But it is what it is, really. Let's talk about positives, mate, and youngsters, because I was actually nice to see yesterday that admittedly majority of it was through lack of options, lack of choice. But to see Chukwuemeka get multiple minutes and look pretty comfortable on the biggest of stages against probably one of the best teams, definitely one of the best teams in the world. He was really promising. Zakaria was playing really well. There was a time when I honestly thought Zakaria we would never see Zakaria in a Chelsea shirt. He had his best game of his short Chelsea career last night. Just on Zakaria, before we move on to the likes of Chukwuemeka, etc., there's a long way to go. But if he maintains or stays close to the level that we saw from him last night, Chelsea have got an option to buy. I think it's about 30 or 35 million euros.
25, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, is it 25? Is it? 25 million pounds. So it could be, it could be 30 million euros, around the 25 to 30 million pound mark. Which is cheap for a midfielder. I look at him and I see his profile, his physicality, the fact he's box to box, he's got energy, he gets around the pitch well. We don't have that profile in our squad. And even if it was to stay as a squad option, I think Chelsea could do a lot worse than buying Dennis Zakaria for 25 or 30 million pounds. Yes, the form needs to stay close to what it was last night. I'm not saying that every game, but there or thereabouts. And traditionally, successful Chelsea signings have not been fancy names, have not been players on big price tags. So, I mean, mate, would you be up for keeping him? I think we talk about smart business now. Chelsea need to be doing smart business with these new owners. We need to move away from our terrible recruitment of previous years. This would be, in my opinion, this, providing he doesn't suddenly play shit for the rest of the season, this would be a smart signing in my book. I actually think it would be one worth doing.
Yeah, well, no, it makes sense, and there's no point getting into bidding wars. 120 million with Enzo Fernandez when
Oh, he's
you
fucked that
can
now
just
anyway.
use. Yeah, I mean, we can just use what we have at our disposal, and I think the key word is if he keeps playing well. But at the same time, what we sometimes see, especially with players negotiating new contracts, we saw it with Willian in his last season. Sometimes they play out their skin when they're playing for something that they really, really need. Because I mean, he's not got a place in the Juventus team.
No.
So it's really vital that he solidifies himself here in London because first of all, he's going to get paid more, most likely. We're definitely going to give him a pay rise. And second of all, he's going to actually get some game time, right? So these are two massive things for any footballer, any professional. But he needs to continue what he's doing. We are taking a gamble because for all we know, Bowley might go and give him another 6-year deal like he has with a lot of others.
Oh, he's 26 years of age.
That's wrong, though, isn't it? You shouldn't be giving long-term deals like what Bowley's been doing. Not to everyone. I can understand.
21, 22. Fair.
Yeah, I can understand that. But my point is, if you're going to give him a contract, be smart. Don't give him stupid wages.
Probably 3 years.
A 3-year deal actually makes sense, but he won't accept a 3-year deal. He'll want a 4 or 5-year deal. So we've got to be very, very careful because if we do end up getting him in, having him on 70, 80, 100 grand a week, because that's what a lot of these guys are on, then, he needs to perform and not get relaxed, which is something that can always happen once he's got what he's worked so hard for.
Yeah.
So we just need to be careful.
But he was a big plus last night. I thought he played really well.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Chukwuemeka for a little bit. Obviously, he came in for big money for a player of his age and his Premier League experience, which is very minimal. I think it was 10 million plus a further 10 in add-ons. I don't know how achievable those add-ons are. Some will be attainable, some perhaps less attainable. But we haven't seen an awful lot of him this season through injury, partly through Tuchel not picking him. We've seen him under Potter. He had a couple of good cameos off the bench, picked up another injury setback. And then last night was a big opportunity for him. And I actually thought he was really good. He was one of our best players on the pitch. I thought him and Zakaria, bar Thiago Silva, were probably the two best players on the pitch last night. And I look at Chukwuemeka and I see someone that reminds me a little bit of what Ruben Loftus-Cheek was like in that Maurizio Sarri season. Like he reminds you of that. Someone that's got good physicality, strength. He's quick for his size and he's really good on the ball. It does remind me a lot of a younger Ruben, particularly in that Maurizio Sarri season where he was doing so well. Obviously, it's a small sample size. It's one game from Chukwuemeka and we need to see more from him. But for me, mate, with the players he's got available right now, and the squad in general, I think he should be featuring pretty much every match day, whether it's from the start or whether it's getting minutes on the bench. I think he should be a mainstay of the squad now.
I have to disagree with that one.
Don't think so?
Because, no, it's not even to do with his quality. I agree with you, the quality, but I think with young players, that is such a big mistake. And this is why we have so many bad injuries, like Pulisic, like Broha. They get chucked in. They get chucked in the deep end. We saw it with Loftus-Cheek under Sarri as well in pre-season, in the friendly game. I want to be really, really careful how we ease these guys into the squad because it's not the footballing ability I'm worried about. It's not even the mental side. It's more the physical side and just being able to basically keep your body in check and recover because if all these players are taking the advice out of the medical staff and half of them are injured, something's wrong, first of all. And when you're not fully developed, you don't have all the muscle strength, all the rest of it, Charlie, you know how it works. You just need to develop a little bit more physically. I think they're both very, very capable, Lewis Hall, of playing more games. And I think Lewis Hall certainly will rotate with Zakaria and deserves to rotate. But I maintain the word rotate. Just because, as I said, physically, the worst thing that could happen is the kid picks up a bad injury and then we lose him for 6 months, right? That's just going to completely hinder his development, and that's exactly the same for Chukwuemeka. So, let's try and get the best out of the players we are playing as well, and not forget that Cucurella needs to pick up his confidence. The midfield we have needs to try and stay solid. We don't want to just completely toss them out. but certainly easing in the younger players, but being smart about it as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, and what was pleasing for me last night was actually seeing the younger players playing, and players that are going to be part of this project over the next few years. It's important that we bed them in and we start using them more, because they are the future. I mean, I don't want to see a 33-year-old Aubameyang coming on the pitch at the expense of one of the younger players, because he's not part of the future. He's done after this season, as far as I'm concerned. You want to give players minutes that are going to be at this club, are going to be part of the future and actually genuinely want to be here. I mean, I'm not saying Aubameyang generally doesn't want to be here, but he's not part of the long-term plans whatsoever. So, it's good to see that we're playing those sort of players. Another nice thing to see was obviously Amari Hutchinson make his debut. As I said at the top of the show, he looked a bit nervous, to be expected. Premier senior debut against Manchester City, pretty tough. He looked a bit nervous, but I did like a few things that I saw in terms of, pace, directness, hugs the touchline, gives width. And I want to see more from him. But yeah, it wasn't the best performance, but you could understand, at 17, 18 years of age that, you're going to be pretty nervous in a game against Man City as your senior debut. But is Hutchinson someone that you want to see more of?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see more of him. And actually, for those people who weren't particularly impressed with his performance, I mean, the fact that he came on and was just able to get the ball moving, make some runs, had some good touches, had some positive touches, that is good enough. I mean, let's not hold him to the same standard that we should with Pulisic and Sterling, all the rest of them, right? He is so young. What's he, 18, 19 years old? Yeah, we don't want to be overly critical. All you can do is take your hat off. Well done, made your debut. Did well enough, in my opinion. And got a lot to improve on there, but certainly a good prospect who should be given more minutes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, RC Champions League winners not so long ago to mid-table mediocrity teams like Fulham, Brighton and Brentford. Well, we have got games in hand. I'm not saying we're going to win those games in hand, but it's a slightly warped misrepresentation because we haven't played the same amount of games. But yeah, from a Chelsea perspective, it isn't good enough, and no one's pretending it's good enough, but it's the reality of the situation we find ourselves in. We're in this position because ultimately this is our level and this is how good we are right now. And injuries aren't helping us, not making excuses, but when you've got 10 first team players out, it's a massive problem. But yeah, are we going to finish 10th? I'd like to think not, but this is the level of the team at the moment, and it's that's the reality of the situation we're in. Mate, what are your? I mean, obviously, won't talk about the City game too much in the cup, so I'll preview that again tomorrow. But in terms of kind of the cup itself, you touched on it earlier. How important is the FA Cup this season, given the fact we're probably not going to get Champions League football? Never say never, but I doubt we're going to win the Champions League. Is the FA Cup really important this season, or do you think if we went out of it, it just gives us a chance to concentrate on the league and try and finish as high up? I guess there's kind of pros and cons to both, but I mean, a good cup run would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, getting to Wembley with an FA Cup final would be absolutely massive for Potter, and I think it would just give him, especially if we can pick up a trophy. I mean, that would cover up a lot of cracks this season, which aren't really Potter's fault, if we're being honest. So I think that we could really praise him as an individual if we manage to drag the team across that competition. But we've got to beat the big boys, and City are the best of the bunch, especially in those cup competitions. Yeah, it's going to be tough, isn't it? It's going to be difficult. But I think there's positives to either side. I mean, regardless, Potter's going to get to know his squad. I suppose if we're knocked out of the cup competitions, it gives him more time to train and actually work on tactics, get to know the players a little bit more. But you get to know the players regardless, whether it's in training or competitions. It's just different ways, right? So, no, I mean, I don't really have a prediction for the City game, to be honest with you.
Mate,
they've already beaten us twice, so actually you could say maybe there is a chance, try and get that odd one. But it depends how seriously Pep takes it as well. They have their vulnerabilities, City, and if we're clinical, then we can absolutely make something of it. But it's a massive if, and I wouldn't hope too much, but I'd certainly keep our eyes open and see what can happen. Either way, there's positives.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. Just want to spend the last 5 minutes just chat about January briefly. Obviously, Enzo Fernandez, well known that we've well documented that at this point of time, it seems we've completely fucked it by obviously trying to lowball Benfica, offering 85 million euros, which is, I can understand why they feel very disrespected by that from us. Chelsea insisting that perhaps they might go back in and try again, but at the moment that very much looks dead. Obviously, a midfielder is important, but I'm always of the opinion that if you can't get who you want, just wait until the summer. Don't just sign someone for the sake of signing someone that you don't really want. But this window is short. January's notoriously tough. Prices are going to be expensive because teams are desperate in January. We are desperate. In an ideal situation, what positions would you like to see addressed? I mean, the obvious ones: midfield, right back, centre forward. That would be the dream.
Every position.
Every position.
No, I mean, yeah, right back. We need a right back. I don't know why we haven't looked at right back.
Yeah, that surprises me.
We don't need to spend a lot. We just need a player that can rotate, right? This geezer from Celtic, pay him 13 million, for God's sake, Todd. If you're happy to pay 85 for Enzo Fernandez, pay 13 million for a right back.
Yeah, just get it.
At least save Reece James from getting injured every year, So that's a start. We do need midfield. We need creativity in the midfield, but you said it yourself. Get the right player. Declan Rice in the summer looks realistic. If he comes in, probably Kante or Jorginho is going to go. That's fair enough. That's an upgrade as far as I'm concerned, especially because Rice is fit most of the season. He is actually available. So always a positive sign. And then up front, we need a striker who's going to score goals. I'm surprised we haven't gone in for Vlahovic so far. In January, I think that would make sense because even if we did get Vlahovic in, he's still. I mean, it's him and Aubameyang, right? So you actually need to have some depth regardless. Because if Aubameyang gets injured, we have no one up front. So it makes sense to try and go for Vlahovic as well, especially because of the financial issues that Juventus are facing. So we might even be able to get a bargain in there. But to be honest with you, mate, it's the magic question, isn't it? What players can we improve the team in? I mean, I could name anyone and we could afford anyone, but do they really want to come to us when we're sitting 10th in the league or 11th in the league? Is it really all about money? I mean, everyone has money now. So there's so many obstacles to overcome. It's very difficult to persuade players to come. If we can get some really, really top players, fantastic. But I think it's going to be a struggle, especially competing against, the likes of Man United, Arsenal, who are in a much, much better position than us.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. You always get excited in transfer windows. It's great when new players come in, but you've got to get the right players. And as I said, January's it's hard to do business in. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what the rest of the month holds. Big games coming up: Fulham, Palace, Liverpool. Some tough games to see out the rest of this month. So we're going to have to hope that some players come in to act as a bit of a boost, a bit of motivation for the rest of the season, because that can be a big boost, quality coming in, but it's about identifying and finding the right quality to lift the side and to actually improve the side, because we need players not just to improve the squad, we need players to improve the first 11, and there's not many of those about, and there's even less of those about in January. So I'll be interested to see how the guys go about doing it, and let's hope there can be some positives. But yeah, seems like a good place to round out the show. Guys, thanks as always for getting involved in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Alex, thanks for your time as always, mate. Guys, make sure you follow Alex on Instagram. That's his platform. Mate, what's the target for this season? You want to try and hit what, 25, 30K?
50K, baby. Let's 50K.
Go. 50K. Right, guys, make sure you follow Alex on Instagram. I've tagged it. I've linked it in the description below. So head over to his Instagram to check out all great Chelsea-related content. You can also catch myself and him over on Chelsea Fan TV. So make sure you also subscribe to that channel as well. Guys, I'll be back tomorrow with a preview for the Man City game in the FA Cup. And also, please make sure you check out the Benoit Badiashile transfer special video that I uploaded this afternoon to the channel with a French journalist, just getting the down low on Badiashile and what Chelsea fans can expect. So make sure you go and check that out as well. I'll see you tomorrow in the match preview for the Cup. Make sure you smash the likes on the stream on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care and up the Chels.